Okay, let's get started, guys. Welcome to my presentation. This is my first time at Shmoocon. Really excited, fantastic conference, very good talks. So I really hope I can make this presentation worth your time. The title of the presentation is Got Citrix, Hack IT, as in the IT infrastructure. A little bit of background about myself. I'm a senior consultant with Foundstone Professional Services, which is a part of McAfee now. Mostly with Foundstone, I do code reviews, threat modeling, application penetration testing. Over the last 4 years, I did code review on virtualization environments, embedded operating systems, device drivers, and a ton of applications. So with this slide, the idea was to give a little bit of marketing fluff for Foundstone. No, we are not going to do that. All I'm going to say is Foundstone kicks ass. I really, truly believe so. So you can make your own judgment. All right, the agenda for the presentation today, the first thing that I wanted to do is make sure that everyone is on the same page about Citrix, everyone understand how Citrix works, at least what it's supposed to do. Anyone who is not familiar with the Citrix environment, just want me to give a 2-minute overview? Sure. No, it's not version specific at all. In fact, everything that I'm going to talk about, or 99% of what I'm going to talk about, is not going to be version specific. It's going to be more about the configuration of the Citrix environment. All right. Can you turn on the lights just for a minute here? I want to make sure that everyone understands how Citrix works and what it's supposed to do. All right. Okay, I guess I'm making an assumption that everyone knows what Citrix does, how it publishes the application, how it's supposed to sandbox applications such that people who are accessing a particular application is not supposed to be able to access any other place on the system. All right. Okay. Now we can turn down the lights. So what I wanted to do is, I'm really not good with presentation slides, so what I wanted to do is just break down the presentation into 5 different demos, actually have a server client configuration here. So this is my server, which is running Citrix presentation server off a VM, and then this is the client that I'm going to be using, and then show you the methodology, walk down the various attack vectors that we'll be using to compromise, or we generally use to compromise the Citrix presentation server. So I have 5 demos lined up. And after the demos, I'm going to go down a little bit of remediation strategies that we think can help harden the system, but I'm still not completely confident that you can secure it in the manner that you can prevent your system from being compromised. But we'll at least talk about some remediation strategies. If you have something in mind, just speak up. All right, so when I talked about my background, I talked a lot about application security, code review, threat modeling, and Citrix is more of a host review. So how do I know about Citrix? It's an interesting story. What happened is we were working for a large bank in Boston, and I was doing web application pen test, and my colleague Palan, who's somewhere sitting here, was doing the internal pen test and was doing the host reviews. And while I was doing the web app pen test, Palan was assessing the Citrix environment. And I know within 2 hours of having access to the Citrix environment, he completely hosed the box. He had all sorts of access on it, and then he started scanning the internal network potentially for vulnerabilities and everything. The point of contact was shocked to see this, and it was an eye-opener for me as well, because I had no clue of Citrix environment or Citrix security. And this was as late as September 2007. Ever since then, I got put on 5 Citrix engagements, every time assessing the Citrix presentation server for vulnerabilities, and in every single engagement it was supposed to go on for a week, but within 2 hours we would have complete access on the system. We would be able to execute any executable that we want, go out on the internet, grab whatever we want, and once we have complete access on this particular Citrix server, the scary part was either the system was on the DMZ or on the internal network, and from there you can start scanning the internal network. You can start doing a vulnerability scan. I don't need to walk you through the internal pen test methodology. You guys know that better than I do. But if you have a foothold in the DMZ or in the internal network, it gets really, really scary. And I think using Citrix, you can definitely do that. So again, we'll talk about the actual demos, we'll talk about the actual attack vectors, and we'll see what we can do. This is how I truly view a Citrix environment. I really think a lot of administrators have this false sense of security They think if they publish an application through Citrix, it somehow magically gets sandboxed. And for example, if you publish Notepad, then any user will not be able to access any other application on the local system. And that's completely wrong. I mean, in fact, I think there is no good way to completely harden a Citrix environment to the point that an attacker cannot launch any other application. Any shmooballs here? Anyone wants to differ? Anyway, so that's my experience. And some of the attack vectors that I'm going to talk about, quite honestly, are very, very lame to the point that they are silly. But in 100% of the chances, like in 100% of the cases, whether it's with me or with my colleagues or with the people that I talk to, they have been able to compromise the Citrix server. And my point is, if it takes a silly attack to compromise the Citrix server, so be it. I can get on it. That's all I really care about. So the first demo that I want to show is a system running in a kiosk mode using the Citrix presentation server and a browser. In most probability, it's going to be IE, but some others might use other browsers as Firefox and Opera as well. But in my experiences, people have been using IE with Citrix presentation server to run a kiosk system. Now, we all are aware of what a kiosk system is. Typically, it's an unmanned unattended system where people can walk up to and access the system. So whether it's in departmental stores, whether it's in a hotel lobby, whether it's in a visitor's lobby, the idea is you let this browser run in a kiosk mode with no address bar, with no tools, with no menu, and the user should be able to go on the internal site, whether it's a hotel's website or an e-commerce site, browse through the news, browse through some of the products, and that should be it. And you shouldn't be able to do anything else. We were doing this review for a government agency. I'm not going to name the name of the agency just for my own security, but they had the Citrix environment running in the kiosk mode in the visitors lobby. So the idea was they just host the system there. People were supposed to be able to walk to it, find out some more information about the agency while they wait for the point of contact. So they brought us in to do a review for the system. And we walked to the system. Within 2 hours, again, we were able to completely bypass this kiosk mode, this sandboxing, launch a local command shell. From the local command shell, the first thing that we do is SFTP to our servers, the Foundstone servers, grab our tools, and then start running and start doing an internal penetration testing on the system. The scary thing here was this particular system was directly plugged in on the internal network. And we all know how the internal network looks. It's never a good sight. So let me just show what are the different attack vectors that people can use once they see a kiosk mode. Bear with me here for a minute. I'm just setting the system up in a kiosk mode, and then we'll pull up the kiosk.
After 4 years of code review on virtualization software, what virtualization package are you using for those Citrix presentations?
For Citrix presentation server, I'm using Microsoft Virtual Server because I got a VM with Citrix configured on it. But my favorite is VMware. All right, let's see. Okay. So this is the kiosk mode. This is running through Citrix here. On my server is the Citrix presentation server. When I log in, this is how you would see a kiosk. Basically, it's an IE you can't minimize it, you're not supposed to go to any other website. But essentially, if you think about it, it's still IE with all the shortcuts that would otherwise be accessible over IE, unless someone has explicitly went ahead and hardened the IE settings. So the first thing that I try and do is pull up the history. If I can pull up the history, see any other site in the history, then I can go to that particular site, and from there jump to potentially a search engine. If I can get to a search engine, then I can search for any tools that I want. I can go to any malicious site that I want, and then hopefully download the tools and execute them on the local system. Pulling up the history is really not complicated. It's just Control-H. If you press Control-H and if it works, then in that case, go through the history, see where people have been. In most likelihood, they won't be able to go. You won't be able to go any place but the original site, because the users will not be able to go there. But if the administrator has ever been on the box using this user account, and if he's ever been on the search engine, then you can get there. So if you just press Google, you can get to Google. From Google, you can search whatever tools you want. So you can say just download and map, and you can download and map. The interesting thing here, if on the search engine, is say, can you guys hear me? No? Okay. So, all right, I'll just speak a little louder. I think we are fine now. All right, so with the search engine, the interesting thing is, essentially this is IE. So what you can do is, if you can get to search engine, then you can host your client-side exploits, whether it's on Acrobat PDF, or whether it's Flash vulnerabilities, or any of the other client-side vulnerabilities, or even for IE for that matter. Just host it on your own particular publicly accessible web server. Use search engine to go to your web server, and then compromise the client. So that way you'll be able to open a reverse shell from the Citrix system to your web server. That's one thing. The other thing is, I'm not sure if you guys have heard about JavaScript port scanners. So if you can execute JavaScript on the system, again, just go to your own web server, start executing JavaScript. Using that JavaScript, you can scan the internal network. You'll know what are the systems on the internal network, what are the ports that are open on the internal network. So that's the other thing to do. So this is just pulling up the history. The other thing to do is, if you can pull up a new instance of the browser, then the chances are that new instance of the browser is going to be an unrestricted instance of the browser. So that means that you'll have unrestricted access to the address bar and the menu. So the way you can start a new instance of the browser is just Control-N, or if you say Shift left click, then that thing is going to launch hopefully in a new instance of the browser. So the way I did this is press Shift key and then left key, click left mouse click. So it started a new instance of the browser, and here again I can just go any place and download my tools. So what typically I would do is go to my FTP server, so here it is. I mean, I'm hosting a publicly accessible FTP server. If I can get the address bar, then I just directly go to the FTP server, grab my tool, and from here I'm just going to say run. I'm not going to do it from here because I don't really trust you guys. But I mean, but you could do it from a client side. You could do it from a kiosk because you truly wouldn't care about that kiosk, no matter what that executable was. So that's again something to consider. The other shortcut that we try, and this has worked for us pretty well in the past, is just Control-O, which is shortcut for file open. If you say Control-O, then again you can type the name of any URL that you want, go to that URL, just repeat the same drill. But the more interesting is the browse button here. If you can click the browse button, and if it works, then you will be able to access the local file system. You'll be able to access the local navigate the local file system, and from here potentially launch any executable that you want. So I'm just going to show an example for cmd.exe. So say even if I didn't have any of the partitions listed, could directly give the partition and the folder name. Here change the file types from HTML to all files, then search for command.exe, right click on command.exe and then say open. So here again command.exe was not one of the published applications on the Citrix server, but I am able to launch that, and once I have the command shell, you know again the drill. You can again go launch any other process. If you have the necessary privileges, then pull up the cache, add users, open the firewall up, do whatever you like. Alright, so that was file open. The other thing is a lot of kiosk systems are hooked to some or the other printer. Typically they allow users to make print copies of whatever, the documents, typically web pages, yes, even web pages, say if it's a just an online ticket or something like that. So if you can pull up the print wizard, Control P, as simple as that. If you can pull up the print wizard, then say print to file. You print to file, say apply, and then print. Once again, it's not going to send the file, the web page, it's to a printer. It's going to try and save it on the local file system. Once you have the file navigate box here, just go to any partition, go to any file, just change the file type from PRN to all files. That didn't happen. Here, and then once again, just if you want to launch FTP, just search for FTP, right click and say open, and that's it. I mean, it's just going to launch that executable for you. A lot of times what happens is some of the clients explicitly turn off permissions from one executable, whether it's command shell, FTP, TFTP, but really the trick is not to have access only on command shell. The trick is to be able to go anywhere on the local file system and then launch that process. And again, I'll show some other examples in which maybe you don't even need a particular executable. You can just write 2 lines of code and then launch, just do any malicious stuff on the local file system. Maybe you want to delete files, maybe you want to access someone else's files, and if necessary hardening has not been done, then you can again navigate the local file system and get access to those files.
With FTP, you point out that even if you block command.exe and you allow FTP, you can just hit exclamation and it actually hits the file system, the local system. It's executed on the local side.
Okay.
So it's not enough you block command.exe, it really has to be blocked on other tools.
Nice.
From FTP using exclamation and execute commands locally as well.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Do you have anything for if, for example, a kiosk doesn't have a keyboard? You guys found anything that's mouse only that?
So mouse only, you can pull up the, if it's like a Windows system, then you can pull up the virtual keyboard if you can access the control panel. So that's the other way to do it. But if you only have a mouse to work with, then what you can try and do is somehow crash the browser. Now it becomes really difficult to crash the browser if you are not allowed on any other website, right? I mean, if it's a local website, then it'll be really hard, but it's not ruled out. If you crash the browser somehow, then you can get potentially access to the desktop view. From the desktop view, you can launch a virtual keyboard, and then you can just use your mouse to type it. It's going to be really slow, but it will work. The other thing that we do is just pull up the help system. Most of the applications again have some or the other way to provide help. If it hasn't been turned off, you can just press F1, go to the help system. Here on the top left corner, click here and then go jump to URL. Once again, you'll be able to type any URL that you want, but you will also be able to type any path on the local file system. So you can say documents here. This is the local file system on this particular server. If you want to go outside on the internet, if you want an address bar, then go to web help and then click on support, or just click on any link, and then a new instance of the browser is going to pop up with just the regular, this is an unrestricted browser with the address bar and all the tools and everything. All right. On the Citrix server, one of the things that I've found is if you can right-click on the Citrix server or on the kiosk, that's game over in 99% of the cases. Again, I can't think of a case where if you allow right-click, how you'll get away with it. So if you can right-click, then right-click on any image. Let's see. Right-click on any image, say save target as, and again you'll have access to the file system. So we've seen this. I'm not going to do the drill again and again. The other thing to do is if you can right-click, say view source on any part of the page, say view source. Here's the source. It's going to get popped up in a notepad. From here, just give a link to your site. If you can save this, just save it on the desktop. And from here, if you can get access to the desktop, if I can kill this particular browser, and if I can access the desktop, then I can open that particular web page and then navigate to Google from there. So I don't need any other shortcuts. I can just right-click, view source, save the file, and then open that file using, again, just through file navigation or accessing the desktop. Then I'll be able to open that file using IE and then go to Google. I'll show that a little later once we are done with the kiosk mode. One of the other things to do is if you are restricted to a local internet site or intranet site, just try hopping around to different places. So for example, if I was restricted to Foundstone site, here I find a link to McAfee. I click on McAfee. From McAfee, if I didn't have, again, just address bar, if it was opening in the same thing, I could search for, say, Google. Not sure why it's hung. All right, stop hacking my system, please. I don't know what's wrong. So it's not taking any input. But essentially, the idea is you hop from one site to the other. From there, you hop to the other site. Just some external link, and eventually you'll be able to get out on a search engine. From the search engine, again, you can download any tools that you want. For some reason, the network has been extremely flaky, so I think it lost its connection. I hope it reconnects. If not, I won't be able to show a lot of the other demos. Anyway, so this was the kiosk mode. Any questions on the kiosk mode so far? Can't see very well, just shout out. No?
No more Citrix, less IE.
Sorry?
No more Citrix, less IE.
Okay, so more Citrix. All right, I'll show the other demos. What was your question?
Do you bring keyboards on these projects?
No, I don't, but it would be a good idea if you have a USB, if you can access a USB port, then you can take a USB keyboard and just plug it in.
Or you can just call OSK.exe, it's going to pop up the virtual keyboard.
What was the process name again?
OSK.
OSK? All right.
Yeah, you click on it and it's going to pull up a virtual keyboard.
Okay, so that's the other way to do it. One of the other things that a lot of people don't realize is Citrix systems have been extremely vulnerable. Just in the last 365 days, there are 9 remotely exploitable vulnerabilities. Now, I'm not going to go down the list because a lot of these vulnerabilities are easy to patch. Just a remotely exploitable buffer overflow doesn't interest me too much because you can patch it up in a few days. But 2 vulnerabilities I'm definitely going to talk about is one is the IMA service buffer overflow vulnerability. And this came out less than 30 days back. A lot of our clients still haven't patched this vulnerability, and I know they are exploitable. They can be exploited. The other very interesting vulnerability is, I want to give a shout out to PDP at GNU Citizen for figuring this out, is the malicious ICA file. Have you guys seen the ICA file? Yeah. So on the ICA file, you can specify the name of the program that you want to launch along with any parameters that you want to launch it with. So if you can launch an executable with your own parameters, and if there is pass-through authentication that has been enabled, it's like a single sign-on. The only thing you need to do after that is convince a victim to double-click on the ICA file. An ICA file is typically just like a text file. It's just a configuration file. And if the victim double-clicks on the ICA file, then the system is automatically going to authenticate on the Citrix environment, launch that particular executable with the parameters that you specify. So again, it's a client-side attack where you can launch an executable, open a remote shell from the server to your particular system. The other thing is the good old brute force. Citrix environments typically are not used using a thick client. Nowadays they are used over a web browser, and unless you are using two-factor authentication or really employing strong password complexity, you just need one account on the remote system. If you have one account on the remote system, this particular bank that we assessed had 4,000 users. You try 4,000 users, you need one account, and from one account you can completely own the DMZ and the internal network. So if you're not using, okay, the internet has died, so I don't know what's happening. So I'll try and reconnect, and hopefully we can do some demos, or else I can just install the client on the server and do it on the local system. So the other thing is the hidden hotkeys. This was the trick that again Palan did on the VPN gateway for this bank, and they were not just silly administrators. They knew security pretty well, at least that's what we thought. And when we assessed the VPN gateway, it took less than 15 minutes to just press Control F1, which maps to Control Alt Delete on the remote system, which is basically Windows Security Desktop. From there you launch the task manager. From task manager, kill any process that you want or start a new task that you want. And on the new task, just say, again, you can pull up the keyboard if you want, you can pull up the command shell if you want. So that's the hotkey. Until it's explicitly disabled, the whole attack takes less than 15 seconds. If you don't want to launch Security Desktop, Control F3 does exactly the same thing. So let me see if I can get the internet connection. Oh. I'm sorry guys, I was really hoping to show these demos, but the wireless is down. I don't have it, sorry. Okay. All right, thanks. Oh, I won't be able to use the crossover cable. The VM is running in a virtual environment on this server, so I'll have to do a lot of juggling. I'm not sure Anyways, let me go down the presentation, and if I can get it done, then I'll get it done. I don't want to waste your time here. So these are the hotkeys. Again, if you have a Citrix environment, try it out. We have had 100% success rate with one of these attacks, just whether it's a hotkey or whether it's IE, or there are two other demos that I would have liked to show you. Oops. So one of the common use case scenario that I've seen is a restricted desktop. The idea is, say if you had an HR application where you wanted users to log in and only fill out a form on the HR application, but you didn't want to open that HR application over the VPN or over the external site. So you allow users to log in over the Citrix gateway. You only show them this particular icon where they double click and then go to that site, fill out the form, and then log out. If you look at the start menu, there would be nothing just other than the logout button. Everything else would be either hidden or disabled, and on the desktop you would only have this shortcut to the HR portal. Now what you could do is, once again, as I said before, if you could right click on the system, then again there's hardly a chance where you cannot compromise the system. You can right click, make a new shortcut, and in the shortcut specify any executable that you want, any path that you want, any folder that you want. So that's one way. And again, I'm sorry I can't show that to you, but you can create a shortcut to C:. The other thing is create a batch file. If you make a batch file, it's automatically an executable file. Put any command that you want in there. Sometimes it's complicated because you won't be able to change the extension. So what you do is create a new folder, and in the folder go in the options, change the options such that you can see the extension, change the extension from txt to a batch file. And again, then from there you'll be able to launch anything that you want. The other problem is on a Windows environment, Windows host scripting is enabled by default. There are only 2 lines of code that you need on a VBS file. If you can create a .vbs file, again, you don't need the .vbs file to begin with. Make a .txt file, change the extension to .vbs, edit the file, add these 2 lines of code. Basically, you're just launching a shell again with these 2 lines of code. It's not too complicated. Anyone would be able to do it. Lastly, a lot of times what we've seen is Microsoft applications are published using Citrix because of licensing issues or whatever. They don't want users to install Microsoft Office on every laptop. They just publish it through Citrix environment, and the idea is you save the files on your network share, but they all use the same application. So the same old exploits, if you can pull up the file explorer, that will do the trick. You can save as, and in save as you'll be able to again see all the files that you want. You can press F1, launch the help system, again from the help system, launch a browser, from the browser go anywhere on the internet. Finally, the macros. We all know macros are extremely damaging. You can write viruses, you can write worms using macros. From the macros you can launch the VBA, which is essentially a stripped down version of the Visual Studio. If you can write a macro, it will point the problems, it will compile the code, it will have access on all the files on the system, and then again the same code that we used in the previous slide is all that you need in that macro. And because you own that file and you are writing that macro, you'll have permissions to run it. Run that macro, you'll have a command shell on the remote system. You don't even need access to the desktop. I'm sorry I couldn't show any of these demos. The idea was to actually walk the demos with you and see it working, but things didn't go as planned. So when thinking about the remediation strategies, when I originally thought about it, I thought that it would be really simple to harden the box, at least using the Citrix presentation server, where they would give you the options. Okay, disable access to file system, disable access to executables, but it's not how it works. Essentially, Citrix doesn't even talk about hardening in any of the guides. Anyone been through the Citrix guide? It's pitiful. I mean, all they talk about in terms of security is SSL and 128-bit encryption. I really don't care about 128-bit encryption. I'm sorry?
But Citrix doesn't talk about on desktop, all the controls of Microsoft, not Citrix.
That is exactly right, but at the same time, the argument is Citrix gives the perception that when you publish an application, the users will not be able to access anything else. They don't even point to the fact that it is the responsibility of an administrator to go to do hardening using group policy orchestrator. They just leave the administrator by themselves to figure this out. There is no hardening mechanism, there's no hardening guide. Every time there is a word security, there's a 128-bit encryption associated with it. And as I was going to say, 128-bit encryption is fantastic, great, but how many times do actually people break encryption and get into systems? In my experience, most of the time, people break into such silly environments using some of the common attack vectors, and that's how they compromise the system. Okay, we'll see if this works a little later now. So when I went about accessing the group policy orchestrator to see if I can harden the system enough, there were 1,300 registry settings, and quite honestly, I tried a lot of these settings, and I didn't feel comfortable that just because I turned on one setting or two settings or a few set of settings on the group policy, it's not like I can't access the file explorer or I cannot access the command shell. It seems like it's really complicated, it's very twisted, there's no good manual or guidance around how you go about hardening the system. So what are the steps that you can take? So the first thing that I saw on one of the forums was a very good idea is if you're using Active Directory, then what you can do is make a new group in the Active Directory, add users to it, and then only provide permissions to that group for a limited set of folders and executables. So that way, I mean, again, I'm not completely sure if that will work, because again, the users will need to run the operating system. The operating system needs privileges to run files. I haven't tried it out, but that's a good idea if you can really make it work. The other thing is make an assumption that your Citrix environment is never going to be 100% protected. So what you can do is put it under firewall such that it cannot access anywhere else on the network. It can only go into certain parts of the internal network or on the DMZ. Any other access on the system should be restricted. Shouldn't be allowed, the file system on the user system should not be mapped on the Citrix server, so that it's not easy for him to just copy files. So using those hardening mechanisms, yes, you can harden the Citrix environment, but will I put my neck on the line and say will that work? Can I do it? I don't think so. I don't feel confident enough that you can actually harden it to the point that people cannot, at least authorized users cannot compromise the system. And then again, I discovered a few tools that promise to harden the system enough such that users, attackers cannot exploit the system. I haven't been through all the list, but here's the list that I found pretty comprehensive. So if you want to make a note of that, play with some of those tools. If you're using Citrix in your environment, you're welcome to do so. Questions? All right, let me just try and see if I can get access to wireless here. Can someone turn on the lights just in case anyone has any questions? I'll take the questions. Not yet. Still trying to get an IP address here.
we're still rolling and everything. Just do me a favor and remember to leave the mics behind.
All right.
And you still got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Somebody apparently kicked the cable out and they were working on getting it back up. I don't know if they got it back up or not. You don't see it, then it probably isn't up yet.
No, I'm not seeing it.
That's unfortunate. Because, you know, such a life of the demo, right? Not
Yeah.
You still got time, though. If you want to, if it's not up, then
Yeah, it's not coming up. I'm sorry guys, it seems the wireless network just went down. They're looking to fix it, but I'm not getting an IP address. I really apologize. Sorry? I'm sorry? Yeah. I need two systems. I need three systems actually. One is a VM, then the other is a server, and then no.
Sorry about that. We're not sure what the hell happened.
I don't know.